A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Matt Williams got a brilliant start from the third row of the grid.
He's gone, he's hit him, he's straight off at the chase.
A half-second lead. Oh, with the sizzling Turra in the background.
He has it. Oh, he's round on the last lap.
There's a massive, massive accident.
Next to the inside, what a move, what a move.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome wherever you happen to be watching around the globe to round number one of the Automobilista Australia GT3 series. The second time that we've done the GT3 series this year and the fourth endurance season overall in the group's history. It's certainly becoming a very, very popular series for all the drivers that participate in the endurance format. It's the 1st of September, Sunday the 1st of September. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, and there are a couple of fathers in the field tonight. And not only is it the 1st of September here down in the southern part of Australia, it is, or southern part of the world more importantly, it's the first day of spring. You wouldn't know it with the weather that's around, but also the first day in a brand new GT3 series for the very first round here at Sydney Motorsport Park for the second season this year. My name is Steve DeVries, aka Nether, and as always, joined in the endurance racing by my good friend Josh Bagzy Bags, and it's a pleasure to have you aboard again, once again, mate, for another endurance season.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Had a bit of a break from the endurance championship, bit of a break from commentary as well. It's going to be nice to have some racing, albeit slightly less enduring than we have in previous seasons because we've got shorter races this season.
We certainly do, and with that in mind, it's a very good opportunity to take a look at a little bit of a season overview as to how this season is going to pan out. As you just alluded to, we have got some shorter formats this time around, so we've got 8 rounds total. 4 of those will be 60-minute races, including tonight's affair, and 4 of those are going to be 90-minute races. 2 of the 90-minute races are actually going to be 4 times time-scaled, and they're going to be day-night races. That's rounds 7 and 8. So when we take a look at the calendar a little bit later on, you'll see that there's those 2 races that will be flagged. There is a limitation on tyre sets this year, so a 10 tyre set limitation for each race event. So drivers will have to be aware of that when it comes to practice sessions and qualifying sessions as to what they can and can't do. And if they need to reuse any sets of tyres, they just can't go bolting on a new set every single time. They've got to be a little bit careful here. There's points for the top 15 drivers, and with that in mind, there is slightly more than 15 drivers here tonight. So if you're classified, if all 17 drivers or so came home and they were all classified, only the top 15 are going to get points. Slightly different point structure for this season. I believe the winner of the 60-minute races gets 18 points, and it'll be slightly more for the 90-minute races. And there are 2 driver classes, much like there was last year where we had Pro and Pro-Am. This season we have Pro and Silver Cup, and we will allude to which drivers are in which category throughout the night. I guess you'll probably be able to tell if you've watched this before how the driver classings are done, and probably which drivers are already paired off against each other without us even having to tell you, Bagsy, because it's pretty obvious which classes some of these drivers belong to.
Yeah, definitely. There is a bit of a skill gap between some of the drivers, but that's why we have the class system, so that people who might not be at the point end of the field can still have a battle and can battle with other people who are at their level, because especially in sim racing, you're going to have some fair differences because some people just have more time, some people just have the knack for it a bit better.
Well, keeping that in mind, let's actually go and have a look at the GT3 drivers for this season. And we will start with the debutants. And the first one of those is Mitchell Hathaway aboard the number 31. He's been a familiar sight this year. He won the opening round of Super 2 in Adelaide and has had a great start to his TCR Roz campaign and HDS racing right into battle with the Mercedes-AMG GT3 for this season. And another familiar face, which you may have seen from the Super 2 broadcast, is his teammate, Billy Dougal Salonga. He's aboard the number 99, and also with Mercedes AMG GT Power. He's going to hope that the endurance format of racing goes quite well for him, and that he can put some of the little indiscretions of Super 2 that he's had this year behind him. He has been involved in a couple of tangles throughout the course of Super 2. Termo, well, this guy needs no introduction. Every time you look in a class that he's racing in, he seems to pull out one of these fantastic former supercars liveries, and he's done the same again here. He's got the former Jack Daniels colours of the Kelly Racing team on board his number 715 Chevy Camaro for this season. He too is on debut in the GT endurance format, and likewise for Coops, he's a little bit of an unknown. He's got the Honda NSX GT3 for this season. He's done the odd race here or there in AMS Oz, but we're looking forward to see if he can get a full season under his belt aboard the number 69 Flat Spot Racing Honda NSX. The good thing for him is he's paired with an experienced campaigner in Mike Coulston aboard the number 66 Flat Spot Racing Honda NSX GT3. A ninth place finish last season was his best result. He was only able to contest the opening round that we had at Barcelona, the Catalunya circuit there, and didn't partake in the rest of the season. He's actually competing from Saudi Arabia. That's why he's referred to as Mike the Saudi Camel. A returning driver to the endurance format, having missed last season, is D2 or Dwayne Davies, and he's decided on the Ford GT in GTE guys for his return for D2 Racing, carrying the number 55, the very, very sleek Ford GT, one of 3 Ford GTs in the field this season. Well, Playboy Racing, and they're back to continue their learning curve in all things sim racing, with Brian Walsh aboard the number 27, and another change of provider for them this year, swapping from the Cadillac power of last season to Ferrari power in the form of the 488 GT3. And well, you can't miss his teammate. His car stands out like dog's balls in that hot magenta pink, the number 272 Ferrari of Glenn Miles. He was unfortunately a recipient of an unwanted record last year, and that was the record number of drive-through penalties, including one of about, I think it was 11 or 12 in the race at Abu Dhabi. PBF, they've gone for a 2-team approach again this year. The PBF Pro-Am team has now been renamed to PBF Team Traxstar, and Rhodey, or Benjamin Rhodes, is returning after selected outings aboard Phil Boak's Bentley last season, and his learning curve is going to climb very, very steeply aboard that SRT Viper GT3R. And his teammate in PBF Team Traxstar is no stranger to the endurance format in the form of Josh Ben, with the number 91 on the door. And he's got great speed. He does show really good speed in some of the Super 2 races this year, and he's no doubt going to be leading PBF Team Traxstar's charge in the point standings this season. Steve Bolger, the number 87 Gravel Rash racing driver, he had a really solid season aboard the Lamborghini Huracan last season, and second place at Road America was his best result. He's decided to take the number 87 and put it on the door of an Audi RM8 or R8 LMS for his assault this year, and was on track for a couple of other good results and just got a little bit tangled up in some of those races. Greg Turra's best finish last season was a second place finish, and it was only a couple of corners short of being a race win, having his pocket picked on the final lap at Suzuka by Lewis Wedding, and Mercedes AMG has been shown the door, and Porsche Power is in for this season. And alongside him, his son. We did say there's some fathers in the field, and one of them is Greg Turra. He brings his son Noah back for another assault. He debuted aboard the McLaren 650 last season, and sixth place at Le Mans being his best result. And it'll be great to see if he can keep pace with his father throughout this season. The first of the heavy hitters in the field comes up next. That's Ozrob. He's aboard the number 555. Carries that over from last season's BMW into the form of a Porsche for this season. He's forming not only a partnership with Will Devonish, but has also joined in the JP Sims Shed Racing stable. Fourth place was his best finish Fourth overall was his finish last season, including one podium finish. Will managed to get a win last year. It came in the United States at the helm of a Lamborghini. He's taken his number 15 across to JP's Sim Shed along with Ozrob, and the 997 GT3R, the 2013 variant of the 997 GT3R, is their weapon of choice. Matt Williams, well, he had a really challenging last season aboard the Mercedes AMG. They actually had the SLS version. He started out the season with 5 straight DNFs, and then that gave way to a 5th place finish at the 6th race of the season at Abu Dhabi. But he's definitely got some pace. He can challenge in this older Ford GT, and you definitely want to be keeping your eye out for the number 37. You also want to keep an eye out for his teammate aboard the 444 car, the FCR Motorsport 444 car, the Ford GT of Brenton Ross. He was right in the thick of that championship battle right up until the last 2 races, but he just couldn't quite hang with the top 2, and he's evolved from the Pro-Am to the Pro ranks, and definitely looking to see what he can do this season. Phil Boak, he missed half the season. He only managed to crack the top 5 once in the 4 races that were contested. He's hoping to complete the full calendar this season, and like the PBF team Traxstar team, he's hoping that the SRT Viper GT3R is the perfect weapon to do just that. Brenton Foley, he was a defending champion going into last season. He's unfortunately relinquished the number 1, and he finished second to the overall champion last season. The multi-time AMS Oz TCC champ will look to strike back this season aboard the Apex Rear Wing sponsored number 074 SRT Viper GT3R. And that leaves only one remaining, the one they're all chasing, Lewis Wedding. He was last season's champion, the only multiple race winner last season, and he's going to look to try and make it 3 out of 4 endurance titles. McLaren's been shown the door in favour of Nissan, and he's decided not to go with the number 1 this season. He's decided to retain his familiar number 89. Well, that is the list of registered drivers that are in the field for this season, and we've just ticked over the qualifying session, so we will jump over and see how things are going, as they've only just begun the qualifying session, and a little bit of a different format for qualifying this season. 10 laps the maximum that are on the board, but there's only 15 minutes, so I doubt very much that anybody's actually going to get 10 laps in a qualifying session. But the first car that's about to set the flying laps is Brenton Ross. And he's not going to set a very good lap by putting 2 right-hand side tyres in the dirt there, Bagzy.
No, he's not. And it's just going to the field there. It's good to see a larger field than we had for a lot of races last year. I think the shorter race time maybe not scaring as many people away, potentially.
Yep, just while you get yourself sorted there with your microphone breaking up just a little bit on the commentary box there, you're right. It's good to see that we have got actually 18 cars in the field at the moment. We did say we had 20 registered. A couple of people not able to make it tonight, but there are also a few of the guest cars, and it's good to see at least 2 familiar names from earlier this season and earlier this year. A couple of races done have decided to jump in and grab those cars. Thomas Paul, one of them we'll see a bit later on aboard the 991 GT3R for Porsche. Recently took part in the TCR Oz. The very popular TCR Oz opening round was here on Monday night at Sydney Motorsport Park, which was fantastic to see. Likewise, we look down the order, we see Lime Mitch aboard a Ferrari 488 coming out to play as well. So Lime Mitch has jumped into a number of different series over the course of time, including TCR and also including the TCAC Retro and TCAC. Brenton Ross's opening salvo is a 127.423. The man they're all chasing is Brenton Foley, who's currently heading the standings with a 1 minute 25.273. He's just lowered the benchmark again, so down to a 25.273, improved by a couple of tenths there.
Yeah, so I'm currently not seeing this. I'm just going on a few seconds back behind you, so I'm still having some technical issues, which is just being quickly resolved, hopefully. We'll see how things go.
Well, you can keep an eye on this man for sure. He actually did mention just before the broadcast he believes that it's going to be very, very tight at the top this season. In actual fact, the top three were only separated by just over 0.2 of a second, and that after practice, and that was Lewis Wedding, followed by Brenton Foley, and then, believe it or not, followed by Steve Bolger aboard the Audi R8. So Steve Bolger, as we said, did have a pretty solid last couple of races in the previous season. I hope he's carrying that good form over. Let's have a look and see what Foley can do to the second sector timing split, which is going to come up in just a few seconds' time. A 1:01.0, and he's actually pulled the pin on that lap and decided, nope, enough is enough. We'll go through the field, and here's his teammate coming around the same bit of track just behind Mitchell Hathaway. I'm looking to see if we can pick up where Lewis Wedding is now. Lewis Wedding hasn't gone out yet, so that's a little bit of a surprise. Already 5 minutes into this session and not out there on the circuit. As we have a look here at Ozrob aboard the Porsche 99. Now I'm getting confused here because I believe these guys have got the 997 and the Turras have got the 991. So they do look very, very similar, but this is the JP Simshed cars, Ozrob and Will Devenish running the 997. And Ozrob very, very close to the pole time there. Now, you did see him go rather wide through that last corner. Now, that is perfectly legal when it comes to running on your own, but we will come back and have a bit more of a talk about that corner a little bit later on tonight, because there is a very, very strict rule around that. Ozrob goes P2, just almost 2/10 shy of Brenton Foley.
All right, I'm in. Everything's working. This is excellent. Now I'm actually getting my first proper look at these cars. And first impressions, I think I like Brenton Foley's car the best, to be honest. I think his looks the nicest.
Yeah, Foley and Boker, they've run very, very similar liveries over the course of the last couple of seasons, and this livery is very much an evolution of the livery they had on the Bentley Continentals last season. Obviously, they've designed it just to suit the styling cues of the Viper. But you can tell the difference as we look here. So Foley has the Apex rear wing banner across the front of his car, and you can also tell because it pops up on the little graphic down the bottom there. And if we go and pick up Phil Boak, you can see he's got the Bundaberg livery on the front of his car, and his first flying lap in qualifying for the 015 pilot is just a hair over a second shy of his teammate's pole mark so far.
Well, we're going on liveries. Further down field, currently 10th, just on the edge of the top 10, Thomas Paul, whose livery is unfortunate because it's on a Porsche and unfortunate because it's ice break, ice coffee. And being South Australian, I am legally obligated to say that Farmers Union Ice Coffee is the best ice coffee and all others are pretenders.
Now that is a very, very familiar livery too, and you can see there the 12A on the door, the Maguire's 12A. This is a guest car. That was Thomas Paul picking up the guest car, but this is a car that you may have, or the livery you may have seen very, very familiar at the Bathurst 12 Hour from time to time. And Lewis has done quite a good job of making sure the styling cues are good. In actual fact, this came out of some of the mods that were used to build this series, and a great job, as always, by Lewis Wedding putting together the GT3 series.
Yeah, indeed. He does a very good job at keeping this series ticking over quite nicely. It's quite well oiled and brought together well. Just having a look at, you may notice, it's not your eyes, the lights on these cars are quite bright. Just having a look at Mike Coulston. It's nice to see the Honda NSX GT3 car out. It's one that you don't see very often.
Yeah, there you go. You could just see it coming directly towards us, and it's very, very bright. And all the drivers have got their lights on. Oh, that's one of the PBF cars in the fence down at turn 2. Didn't quite see who that was. I think that might very well have been Phil Boak. But I'm actually just getting some cues here that Ozrob's actually on a pretty decent lap. He was quickest to the first sector, quickest to the second sector. He's on the run to the line now. Has he got enough to surpass Foley? No, not quite.
That was close.
Just
200ths of a second.
Very, very, very close. He's very good through Sector 1 and Sector 2. In actual fact, his Sector 2 was purple. Fastest sector of all of them, or fastest of all in Sector 2, 34.28, and he was extremely quick in Sector 1. And Foley will have seen that and realised, I'm not safe. I've got to get out there. He's come out right behind Steve Bolger, though. He's also taken to the lane, and it's happy hour here at Sydney Motorsport Park. And finally, and I do say finally, Lewis Wedding has decided he's got to come out and have a crack at a lap here, and he's already 0.4 of a second shy of the pole mark coming on his first flying lap. So this is going to be set to put him P4 provisionally if he can hold this together, and then he'll no doubt press on from there.
Yeah, Lewis Wedding in the GTR, which is my favourite GT3 car. It's also, I think, the tallest GT3 car, so if you're in something like a Ford GT, you actually have a lot of trouble seeing around the GT3 car.
Yeah, it's extremely tall, not just in the roofline, but in the rear wing as well. The rear wing obviously has to sit at a certain angle, depending on where the roofline is from the car, and you can just see it there that it sticks up, and it is a very, very wide car.
It is, and when you've got someone like Lewis Wedding at the helm, it's even wider because he is quite good at either driving defensively or just laying you through and following you until you're worn out and leave the track unchallenged.
Absolutely. Taking a little bit of curb there at what is the sixth corner of the circuit, and now flying around this left-hander and down to a passing zone down here at turn 8. And then the charge out of turn 8 through the little kink at turn 9. It bends to the right, and he's up on Foley's time here is Lewis Wedding. Plenty of curb, turn 10, and then wide and hang it out there and tuck it back in for turn 11. Late apex for Lewis. Try and maximise the power on the exit here. He was down by about 1/10.5 at Sector 1. Sector 2 he was up not only in his own time, he was up on Foley's as well. And he goes P1, 3.5 tenths quicker. Into the 24s we go.
There's a very good lap from Wedding there, especially that final sector. That's what set it apart from everyone else. He was about 1/10.5 slower than Foley in the first sector, but he just blitzed him in the second sector and just is slightly faster in the third. So Foley's going to have his work cut out for him, and he has very little time left to do it as well. He's in the pits at the moment. He'll need to be out in the next probably 45 seconds to be able to have a chance at getting another lap in if he decides to. Actually, he can't. He's done the maximum amount of laps. Yeah, so Foley is not able to beat that time.
And Lewis is pressing on with it as well. He was 1/10.5 up on his own marker at Sector 1 split, so he's pressing on with it. He thinks that maybe there's some threats from behind, because not far behind Foley is Ozrob, and he still hasn't improved his time just yet either. Lewis's lines look very, very tidy. He's not throwing the car around like a ragdoll, and he's found more time. He's nearly 3 tenths further up on his own marker, so this is going to be a mid-24 if he can keep this pace up. It's all about the last couple of corners. And going for that patented late apex again, just not quite getting close enough to the curbing on the left-hand side that time around, but he will drive to the line. It's probably going to be about a 24.6 or a 24.7. 24.726, so lost a little bit of time in the last sector. Just struggling to get the nose turned in for turn 11.
Ozrob's 4 tenths down, so unless he has the mother of all final sectors, I do not think he's going to get close. But he does have a chance of jumping Brenton Foley, which he was only 200ths behind. Let's see how he goes as he comes across the line.
Not close enough.
Not quite. He didn't quite beat his own time either, so he's got one more lap to have a go at it. We'll see how he goes.
He'll press on with that. Foley, as you said, is in the pits. Steve Bolger in the pits as well. So too Phil Boak, Mitchell Hathaway, Termo. They're all in the pits. Here's the first of the FCR Motorsport cars, the 2 older Ford GTs. They're actually running line astern. Brendan Ross is 8th, and just ahead of him, Matt Williams 14th. They're separated by a half a second, so I'm not sure how they're going for pace here, but Brendan Ross is on a quick lap, and his teammate Matt Williams just a little bit, actually about 2 car lengths ahead. What sort of lap time can they do? At the moment, it's a 26 for Brendan Ross, so he shaved some time off his PB. In actual fact, if we look down the order, Matt Williams improved a little bit as well. Oh, very, very, very loose for Matt Williams, and going very deep under brakes there into turn number 1. I get the impression he's holding up his teammate here somewhat, and this is probably compromising Brendan Ross just a little bit.
Sorry, Kogoshi, that Ozrob going into the final sector, 2 tenths up on Lewis Wedding. He set a personal best first and a track best second sector. So as he comes across the line, as Greg Turra gets disqualified
That
for
might be
some reason.
for excessive laps. I'm wondering what's happened there. Osrob goes to the top. Goes to the top by 4/100ths of a second. You called it, Bagzy. You called it that he was on a flying lap. And we did get the impression it was going to be very tight at the top. And that is a very, very tight margin. Well done to Osrob.
Got it at the death as well. Wedding did not get a chance to respond to it.
And late
It was a very well done job from Osrob there.
Late improvement from Dwayne Davies as well on his own PB. So the D2 racing drivers up to P12. Now I was looking to see what happened to Greg Turra. Yeah, he exceeded the lap count by the looks of things. So maybe came across the line and wasn't quite aware of what was going on there. But a little bit embarrassing for Greg Turra because he's in 18th and his son is up there in 15th place. So son leading the way at the moment in the interfamily battle.
Where was Turra before he was disqualified? What position was he?
Well, his lap time is a 26.631. So that would have been good enough to put him somewhere in the mid-pack. So he's obviously had his time deleted as a result of being disqualified.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I believe that the game will still let him race. It's just that he's disqualified from the qualifying session, essentially.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It will still let him race, but it will be disqualified from the qualifying session. Well, what will... Go on.
I was just going to say a quick shout out to Termo, who in the Jack Daniels racing car, he's the top-ranked Silver Cup driver. And he's ended up ahead of several pro drivers. He's ahead of Brendan Ross, Matt Williams, Josh, and Greg Turra, who was disqualified, but I believe his time was faster than Turra anyway. So that's an excellent job there.
That's a superb job from Termo on debut as well. The one of 4 debutants in the field, and another one of the debutants, Mitchell Hathaway, P6 as well. So those 2 guys on debut doing very, very well. Then the other 2 debutants are currently missing from the grid. Well, what we're going to do in this little 10-minute lull with the warm-up session is have a little bit of a look not only at tonight's race, but we're also going to take a look at the GT3 calendar. So you can follow through with this one on the stream, Bagzy, because I haven't provided anything for you for this. But, well, not that one. We want to look at this one here. So this is where we are tonight. So Sydney Motorsport Park, we've raced this circuit quite a lot. So the 3.93 kilometre Gardner layout, 11 corners, and it's a 60-minute race tonight. So there's going to be pit stops in every race, and this one's a 60-minute test. We were here at TCR a little bit earlier this week, and we've raced several times here at Sydney Motorsport Park. So the drivers will be very, very familiar with this Australian circuit in our own backyard. And then we're off to Europe. The first of the European races is Spa-Francorchamps, and it's the first of the 90-minute races as well. So the 7-kilometre long circuit that runs through the Ardennes, the iconic corners, Radillon, Eau Rouge, Pouhon and Blanchimont, they're really going to throw down the challenge to the drivers in what is set to be a 90-minute torture test around the longest circuit that we will visit on this season's calendar. Then we head off to one that I think a lot of drivers will be looking forward to, the very, very fast and very, very narrow Brands Hatch Grand Prix layout. So the English circuit plays host to a 60-minute race, and the one thing that's going to be very, very interesting to watch at this race will be the narrow pit lane, the narrowest pit lane that is I've actually ever seen. It's going to be very, very congested in the lane, especially with the numbers of GT cars that we have contesting this year's championship. Round 4, well, I'm a bit impartial because I'm really looking forward to this one. This is my favourite circuit to race in sim racing, the Hockenheimring. We're using the Grand Prix layout. We're not going through the woods like we used to in the old days, but the modernised Hockenheimring circuit still throws down a very, very great high-speed challenge. So this one will bring us up to the halfway point, and really I think could be probably a turning point in the championship if you can get your car well sorted for that circuit. Round 5, we head off to Jerez in Spain. We're using the MotoGP layout, so if you're familiar with Jerez, that will be the elimination of the centre chicane in the 3rd sector. We use just the steady state right-hander there in Sector 3, and a circuit more commonly known these days for Moto Grand Prix in the older days for Formula 1 as well. We're going to spend 90 minutes circulating the Circuito de Jerez. Europe finishes with Zandvoort Park. This is a circuit we've done in ARW before, and it's the first time we've done this in AMS Oz as well. The 4.3 kilometre Dutch circuit will make its return to the Formula One calendar next year, but before then, we spend 60 minutes going around this very, very tricky circuit. I think this will be one of those circuits that becomes a real game changer in the championship, because it's narrow in some spots and it's very, very wide in others. The first of the final two races is a 90-minute one at Fuji International Speedway. We've been here before in the World Endurance Championship series that we had last year, and this one is the first of the day-night races as well. So we did say before, round 7 and 8 are day-nighters, so the 1.1 long kilometre front straight is the big highlight of that circuit. And we finish it in our own backyard again, the Adelaide Street Circuit, another 90-minute race, another day-night race as well. We've been here before in GT racing. If you remember back to season 1, this was the round where Greg Turra had his big moment at turn 8 where he slapped the walls, and it's also the same race where Coriot ran out of fuel within touching distance of the checkered flag. Well, that is the calendar. There it is again for your record, and there's the dates that it's all going to take place as well. Highlighted down the bottom, Fuji and Adelaide, the day-night transition races. Everywhere else is looking rather good, and I like the look of this calendar, Bagzy. This is going to be a great series.
I don't think there's any tracks there that I dislike. The only thing that I might dislike is the new Hockenheim. I'm a fan of that blast through the trees. It was obviously terrible for spectating, but in this case, we don't have to worry about spectators. But that being said, the new one is a better track in terms of overtaking opportunities and things like that. So can't really complain. It'll throw up a good race.
Yeah, it certainly will. It's the one I'm looking forward to the most. But the really interesting ones are the game-changing circuits. Now, as I said before, I think some of the game-changing ones are going to be Brands Hatch and Zandvoort, because those circuits are very, very quick. Some of them, in some spots, especially at Zandvoort, it's very, very narrow, and we remember this because we did this in the Caterham series in ARW. There's some parts where you can pass, there's some parts where it's wide, and there's some parts where there's just one line. There's no way through. And if drivers are not very careful at those two circuits, they could lose a big, big stack of points.
Well, as we've seen last season, just being consistent and making it to the end of the race is probably the biggest thing. If you don't make it to the end of the race, you're losing all the points you could potentially get. If you do drag yourself to the end, you're going to get at least some points, and that's what's really kept some people in it, and why the championship went down to the wire last season. And
if you avid viewers of the World Endurance Championship and the GT Championships will remember that all three of the seasons so far, the two last year and the one this year already, did all go down to the last race of the season, hence how tight and how closely prepared this championship is in terms of car parity in that as well. So we might very well have another season where it goes down to the last race of the season, and wouldn't that be something? That's the kind of championships we like.
It certainly is. It definitely makes for exciting times for people who like spreadsheets and maths, when you can go through all the different scenarios, and also when the battles on track are those people.
Certainly right. Well, let's have a look at tonight's race. More importantly, as we said, we're here at Sydney Motorsport Park. It is the 3.93 kilometre Gardner layout, so counterclockwise circuit. We've got 7 left and 4 right-hand corners, so we've got 11 total. 60-minute race, and based on the lap times we're seeing, that's going to give us somewhere in the realm of about 41 to 44 laps total duration. That includes stopping for the pit stops. Fuel burn and tyre rate, wear rates accelerated, just to make sure that we do force the pit stops. And the key things to watch out for: the high speeds into turn number 1, the very, very famous high speeds into turn number 1. Give it a little bit of dab on the brake just before you get to the corner, just to allow you to transfer the weight to the nose and get the car turned in, plant your foot and hang on. That's basically what we saw in TCR, and it's going to be no different through here for GT cars. The passing zones into turns 2 and 7, so turn 2, the first of the left-hand hairpins, the slowest corners on the circuit, and turn 7, which just brings you up to the second sector timing intermediate. They're the two under brakes manoeuvres that we'll be looking out for. And I did allude to it just during the qualifying session, the wide lines through turn 11. Now, this is one thing that'll be getting brought up in the driver's briefing. When you go wide at turn 11 on your own, the track doesn't actually give you a penalty for doing so. You do cross over the yellow line, and you can use that to your advantage to make a good exit and get maximum speed down the front straight. But the big query is over if you're battling with somebody else, and if that person makes a move underneath you and you've gone all four wheels to that right hand side of the yellow line, you have to yield position. You're deemed to have gone off the circuit, and you have to yield position. You cannot force a maneuver after that. And we will probably see that a little bit during the race, I'd imagine. So be warned to watch out for everything down there at turn 11. Bagzy.
Looks like the driver's briefing has ended because we've got a few people out on the track in these final couple of minutes. It's going to be good. You remember you saying about turn 1 about the high speeds. You've got to be so careful because you obviously want to go as far to the right-hand side of the track as you can so that you've got the most open line through the corner. But if you get a couple wheels on the grass, that can be enough. You lose enough grip there that suddenly you're understeering through the corner and you're just going either straight ahead into the barriers at the end and losing a wheel, or at an angle through the corner into the barriers and losing a wheel. So you've got to be careful as well as absolutely flat out through there.
Yeah, well, that was a good example there. We just saw Phil Boat going through turn 11, and you did see all four wheels to the right-hand side of the yellow line, which defines the track limits. And we'll actually go back and see if we can pick up the number 13 of Josh Ben. He's out there at the moment, actually just coming up to that part of the circuit. Here he is now, the number 91 Team Traxstar, or PBF Team Traxstar. So just through, this is turn 10. And see, there he goes, all four wheels to the right-hand side of that yellow line. That's the one we were just talking about on the track information screen. So that's perfectly fine when you're running all by yourself. But if Josh was battling with another car then, and if it was the race, and that car came up his left-hand side and was side by side with him, what Lewis would have told all the drivers in the briefing is that you have to yield position. You cannot try and force a passing manoeuvre around the outside because you're deemed to have left the track.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how that ends up going because it's the sort of thing that will probably end up being a penalty, or will certainly end up being a penalty after the race, which can often be a lot more impactful of a penalty in comparison to one during the race because you've got no chance to make the time back up. And it's the sort of thing where we don't have a live steward, so we may point out on the broadcast, but we're not going to be imposing penalties. It'll just be after the race, you'll get a penalty of whatever's been determined by Lewis.
That is correct, and given if anything is captured on the broadcast, it is actually reviewable by the stewards after the race as well. So that's one thing to keep into consideration. We've gone up to 19 runners as well. Will Devonish had some trouble during the qualifying session. He jumped out, has jumped back in, so we have 19 runners. And we're away on the formation lap, and Bagsy's going to take you through the field.
All right, first place, we've got Ozrob. He came close to the championship last time. He'll be looking to improve, and he started well on pole. Next to him, in the Nismo GTR, Lewis Wedding, our current champion, our reigning champion. He's looking to win today to start off his new campaign. Brenton Foley, PBF Team Vodafone, with that Apex rear wing sponsorship. In third, alongside him, Steve Bolger in the Audi. Behind Brenton Foley is Phil Boak, his teammate. They'll be line astern for the start, rolling start. Mitch Hathaway in the HDS Racing Mercedes. Next to him is Termo, the highest Pro Silver runner for Jack Daniels Racing. Brendan Ross, first of the GTs in 8th for FCR Motorsport. Lime Mitch is in 9th in the slightly lime green car. Alongside him is Thomas Paul in the first of the Porsche guest cars, Icebreak. Farmers Union Ice Coffee is much better. Matt Williams, FCR Motorsport, the other FCR car, he is in 11th place. 12th place, DD Dwayne Davies, He'll be for D2R Racing. He'll be looking to push his way through the field from back down in 12th. Mike Coulston in the NSX. The, I believe, what's that live? Flat Spot Racing there with, I'm not sure if that's meant to be Australian flag or English flag there. It looks like Josh Ben for PBF Team Traxstar is in the pit lane, so he's missed the start.
He sure
That
is
is unfortunate for him. Noah Turra currently leading Turra, the Lone Wolf and Cubs Racing. He is, I'm presuming, the Cub in Lone Wolf and Cubs Racing, but the Cub is currently leading.
He is.
Rhodey in 16th, also PBF Team Traxstar. Glenn Miles in 17th in the garishly pink Playboy Racing mobile. Will Devenish also in a Porsche for JP Sim Shed. And bring up the rear, disqualified from qualifying for too many laps, it is Greg Turra.
Here we go. Pace car is in. 60 minutes are on the clock. Ben will start from the pit lane. He'll be released when they get to turn 4. A 10-second stop-go penalty already for Mitch Hathaway. That'll be for a start infringement. But the 60 minutes are counting. Let's boogie. Here we go. Osrob gets a good jump. Lewis Wedding's akin to the task and stays awake. Foley already moves over to get the preferred line into turn number 1. And they run a line astern, the top 3. And they've already formed a little bit of a gap. Steve Bolger has now got Phil Boak for some company, but goes a bit deeper under brakes to maintain position. So far, so good. Everybody's behaving themselves as they circumnavigate the circuit on the first lap. And Brendan Ross has already moved up and picked up 1 spot. So too Thomas Paul. He's moved forward 2 spots already. Mitchell Hathaway throwing down a challenge already to the PBF Viper of Phil Boak. But he has got that 10-second stop-go penalty hanging over his head. Now we'll have to quiz as to why that happened. But it's definitely going to be a start procedure infringement of some nature. And I dare say he's probably best to try and get that over and done with as soon as he possibly can.
Yeah, you want to get it done now before, because if the safety car comes out due to a first lap incident or in the first few laps, you're not going to be able to take that for quite a while.
Oh, Termo wide.
From Osrob.
Termo very, very
Did
wide
everything
there.
he needed to do.
Termo wide at turn number 6. And he's been rounded up there by not only Lime Mitch, but also by Matt Williams, and D2 going through as well. As Termo moves over, and Will Devenish was coming through as well. Devenish has had a good start. He's already picked off a handful of drivers. And here's what we were talking about. Underneath Termo. So Termo was out wide. Devenish was underneath. And he made the passing move stick. Now,
that was an unfortunate 5 corners for Termo.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate. He basically got freight trained. Now, where's Hathaway? Has he gone in? No, he's still going.
Interestingly, Lewis Wedding set the fastest lap that lap, so I'm guessing it took him a bit longer to get across the line. He must have left Osrob a bit more of a gap than he had, so that's something interesting. Second place person getting the fastest lap on the first lap.
And a spinner just at turn 2 there is Noah Turra, so just the back end of the car coming around, so that allows not only Glenn Miles in his pink Ferrari through, but it also allows his father Greg Turra through into 16th place. So now Son's got some work to do.
Yeah, we noticed on the first lap he went a bit wide on turn 2 as well. Got a couple of wheels on the grass, so looks like he's done it again. The same thing has happened. Off the start, Osrob did everything right. Had that rolling start, had the inside line, and just kept it going. Lewis tucked in behind him and didn't really challenge him too much in the first corner. So the front 3 all doing pretty well. Although Wedding got very close and has gone very, very wide there. So maybe he got a bit of wash coming under that close to Osrob's wing, and that sent him a bit wide.
Well, top 3 have broken away here as well now, and they've left Phil Boak pretty much in their dust to the tune of about 2.5 seconds. So we did hear from Brenton Foley before the broadcast that he did say it was going to be a very, very closely fought battle at the top. In actual fact, Brenton Foley, quickest man that time around at 25.968, just ahead of Osrob's 25.987, and Lewis Wedding at 26.116. So really continuing to go hammer and tongs at it here. This top 3. Mitchell Hathaway still hasn't come in to serve that stop-go penalty. I'm not sure if he's aware of how to stop. He's only fairly new to sim racing here in AMS Oz. It's Mitchell Hathaway, an experienced iRacer. I'm wondering whether or not he knows how to configure the pit menu for the stop-go penalty. That's something that we've seen some drivers have trouble with over the course of a race in past times.
Yeah, we've seen it not just with drive-throughs, but also changing tyres, because if you don't have the buttons bound to be able to navigate the menu, you can't change tyres sometimes, which is unfortunate. You see people ending up driving around on 4 punctured husks because they've just been driving them to the end and haven't been able to change them, especially in, I believe, a 2-hour race at Road America. We had a couple of people do that.
Yeah, we had seen that before as well. You're right, with the punctures going on as well. Josh Ben did get released from the pit lane, but he is quite a substantial distance off the back of Glenn Miles, lapping in the 1:29s at the moment. As fastest laps exchanged again there between Ozrob very, very briefly, and with a 1:25.7, and then a 1:25.3. 25.3 for Foley. Foley's making a move. He's pulled out and had a bit of a look at Lewis Wedding down to turn 1, but Lewis Wedding's gone deep.
Very deep.
Oh, wow, he got worried out of it big time. So Foley thought about making the move, pulled out of it, and basically Lewis Wedding got scared pretty much, I'd think. That's a very, very un-Lewis Wedding-like move. Let's take a look at this again.
Well, if you were watching Formula One circa 2014 and you remember Sky Sports going on about the psychological advantage between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg every other second, well, psychological advantage, definitely Foley with that move. He just existed behind Lewis Wedding, and Lewis Wedding was like, I don't like this. This is not something I want to happen, and so he just obligingly went off the track.
Yeah, so we've that's what you call getting worried out of the move. So Lewis was he was aware that Foley was behind him. He was probably aware that Foley had just set the quickest lap of the race, and he was aware that Foley was over his left shoulder, and looked in his mirror, and then when he looked in his mirror, probably just missed his braking marker by about 20 metres, and that was enough to send him off. I must say, very, very well saved by Lewis Wedding to keep the car pointing in the right direction as well, because he's hardly lost any time to the leading pair as well. He's only about 2 or 3 car lengths further back compared to what he was when he was in the sandwich in second place.
It looks like Bolger has had a bit of a spin back down into, I'm not sure what turn that is. I think turn 9 potentially, the hairpin.
Turn 7's the hairpin. Yeah,
turn 7. Sorry.
Well,
yeah, he's gone very wide and lost about 5 positions there.
Well,
he actually spun. And he got off onto the curb.
He's actually lost 8 positions since the drop of the green flag. Qualified very, very well, Steve Bolger. He was up in 4th place.
Oh, sorry, Lewis Wedding has just taken the position back from Ozrob. So Ozrob's gone. Something's happened with Ozrob there,
yeah,
and he's dropped back to 3rd.
Well, let's see if we can have a bit of a sticky beak at what happened here. I think he looks like he's just been he's been muscled out of it at turn 2, and then Wedding's entitled to the space on the outside and just gone completely round the outside of him at turn 4, which has put him on the correct side for turn 5. So, Foley's made the passing move, and Lewis Wedding's decided to press on with it and keep going, and made enough space for himself. So a couple of early changes.
Going to be mildly unhappy there.
Yeah, I think he would be very, very unhappy that he's thrown away not only the lead of the race, but he's also thrown away 2nd place as well. But he's still in touch. He's about the same distance that Wedding was back from him as well.
Sorry, lots of people been going very wide with the final corner. I know it's sort of the ideal line, but there's been a fair bit of toing and froing between each other. I think maybe some people letting other people in because they've been too wide, but we've got 2 and 3 wide down the main straight.
Yeah, we've got Thomas Paul having a battle here with Lion Mitch. They were side by side for half the front straightaway. They're pressing on with it. It's likewise D2 just ahead of Matt Williams and Mike Coulston. They were very, very wide as well. Then they're chased by the recovering Steve Bolger. I'm also just having a look to see what has happened to Brendan Ross. He's actually had a pretty decent start. He's up to P5 now, obviously with Steve Bolger falling off the road. And Will Devonish had a ripping start from rear of grid. He's all the way up to P6, so doing quite well.
That's actually amazing. Like, he was not that long ago down in P12, so that's actually incredible.
He's managed to cut his way through this angry pack that we're looking at the moment with relative ease, it should be said. And actually, his lap pace is actually pretty good. It's a 26.9 was the last time around. It's not the quickest laps that are out there, but he's certainly holding his own at the moment. Maybe he could be playing himself into a longer sort of game here. Maybe could go a little bit longer.
angry pack with Lime Mitch at the head of it, isn't it? It's all closing up.
We've got Lime Mitch, Thomas Paul, D2 who's on screen at the moment, Matt Williams, Mike Coulston, Steve Bolger, and then Termo who's had a few little issues in this pack as well. So that's positions 7 through to 13 that are all in that shot right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All of them on the main straight now, all trying to get the slipstream off each other down this very, very long front straight into the high-speed turn 1. Hold on for your dear life. You just tip the car in and just start praying that it's going to make sure it stays off the little bit of grass on the outside here. Bolger has a look at Mike Coulston, and that's a position gain. That's a very, very smart move by the Audi driver, and he takes over P11 on his recovery.
Yeah, it was a very good pass. It was telegraphed all to hell, but hey, that's all you need to do. Because they Lime Mitch, he lost that position to Thomas Paul as well, so Thomas Paul now heads the train. Ozrob has fallen off the back of Wedding and Foley. He was 7/10 slower last time round, as it looks like Matt Williams has had a bit of a moment there, and he's now under attack from Bolger. So, they're all checking up here as Dwayne Davies there, indeed, much nicer looking for GT. Or maybe not nicer, but cooler looking, as Matt Williams goes up the inside.
Side by
4
side.
GT on 4 GT. Dwayne Davies is going to have the inside line, and it looks like he'll be able to keep that one there. Can Williams hang it around the outside? He cannot. Lime Mitch has gone very wide in front of him, though. So it's all still together. And there's a yellow flag because Boke's off. Boke's in the wall.
But Phil Boke, where's Phil Boke? He's in the wall. He's gone straight on at turn 10. That's a disaster for Phil Boke. We were just cycling through to try and pick him up. What on earth has happened to the PBF pilot out of this little tricky section here? Oh, back end came around. That is a very, very tricky braking zone. And a little bit of the front lost as well. We have seen that before in TCR earlier session, and he's in. He's got no choice. I think he's probably got steering damage as a result of that, but he's decided he cannot continue, and he's come in. So not a good start for Phil Boke. Thankfully, he's one of the early pit boxes.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for him, though, because he's going to probably have to two-stop now. You're going to have to be very lucky to make it all the way to the end on one stop from here. As while we were looking at that, Lime Mitch got past Thomas Paul again into turn 2, so they've swapped around again. Dwayne Davies and Matt Williams are once again side by side, and for the leading GT battle, Matt Williams has got ahead now. Bolger's still just waiting, wanting those positions back, but he lost at the start. Yeah,
Mike Coulston's also been passed by Termo as well now, so that didn't last too long, but there's been some pretty respectful battles going on between all these guys in this little angry pack. And you can see there Matt Williams in the 30s.
Oh, as you say that, Bolger runs into the back of Dwayne Davies.
And Phil Boke
gets a drive through. Oh, dear.
That'll be for speeding, so bad to worse for Phil Boke. And you're right, we just did see a little bit just before it cut away from shot with Steve Bolger. Just looks like he went into the back of somebody here. It was just on the run down the hill through 6 into 7.
Yeah, Bolger and Davies.
Yeah, so here he goes. Yeah, just lost a little bit of his aero fairing there, so it wasn't... D2 probably only just felt a little bump. Bolger had to grab a fistful of opposite lock and hang on to the car there. So, you're right, this angry battle pack is really starting to get angry.
Looks like Matt Williams got Thomas Paul before turn 1. So that GT3 has a bit of a pace advantage as Bolger goes up the inside of Dwayne Davies. Dwayne Davies is round. So contact between Bolger and Davies, and Davies has gone round at the hairpin.
We're just having this pass by Matt Williams. He's gone around the outside at turn 1. That is a really super, super move. We'd seen a number of drivers in TCR Oz on Monday go down the inside before turn 1, which is traditionally the way you do it. But that is a sensational pass. And then, there's the back end of Dwayne Davies going around just with Steve Bolger. And side-by-side contact down at turn 2. But that was a ripping pass from Matt Williams on the outside.
Yeah, that was really... I think it looks like Bolger got too much curb. Hit the side of Dwayne Davies and sent him round. So might be potential punishment heading Bolger's way for that one. Might be seen to have been a bit too ambitious. But we'll see. Just got to say, though, that spider livery... I'm guessing it's not a Spider-Man livery, but it's a spider livery and it looks really cool. As Boke gets another drive-through penalty,
we were just
serving his drive-through penalty.
We were just watching him serve the penalty. He's now gone a lap down to the leaders, but something is not right there for Phil Boke. It looked like he got it stopped okay before the line. So
yeah, the thing that's not right is he has a lead foot and was in the pit lane, and the constable was waiting at the end and got him with the radar gun. As Thomas Paul, not too happy about being overtaken around the outside, goes around the inside of turn 2, but Matt Williams has the inside for turn 3 and takes the position straight back. So Paul had 7th for all of 3 seconds.
Matt Williams now up to P7 and heading this angry train as...
Lime Mitch has broken away from the train.
He has, yeah. Lime Mitch was heading the train and he's now broken away. This is another part of the circuit where a number of drivers have been taking liberties with the track limits out of turn number 5. So turn number 5, because now through 6. Now this sweeping bend through turn 7 and then down to the next braking zone at turn number 8. And you've got to commit very early to your braking for here. And again, run it wide, out past the track limits, and just make sure you get it back in quick time. Just run through the kink at 9, and then 10 and 11, the last couple of corners. So this little angry pack has just settled down a little bit now. Obviously, Dwayne Davies has fallen out of this battle, and they're all trying to hunt down Lime Mitch. Let's see what the times that they're doing. So Lime Mitch's Matt Williams' last lap there is a 27.7, and Lime Mitch is a 27.5. So he extended the margin out by 0.2 of a second. And now that Matt Williams has gotten to the front of the train, he too has broken away from it.
It's all spreading out, but it seems like Thomas Paul might have been a little bit of a cork in the bottle there. But still, he's just fast enough that people are struggling to get past him and they're having to really commit for it. So only really one person can get past him a lap at this point. It does suck for Thomas because he's going backwards, albeit slowly. But who knows? We'll see how he goes. Maybe he's conserving fuel. Maybe he's trying to go a bit longer so he has a shorter pit stop. We still don't know how pit stops are going to exactly roll out here because you think based on GT3 last season, the fuel burn is the same, I believe, and the tyre wear is the same as well, as far as I know. So you should be able to get about half an hour from a tank, which for an hour race means one stop. Yeah. But you want that stop to be in the middle, or else you're going to have to stop twice, and that's going to cost you a lot of time. Correct.
That's precisely what we obviously saw with the likes of Mitchell Hathaway having to come in to serve his stop-go, but then getting back out there and then having to... He'll have to stop again, obviously. Very, very wide line from Thomas Paul there. Much, much wider. In actual fact, worked to his benefit because he actually got a much, much better exit out of 11. So, obviously didn't get penalised for a track limit on that occasion. But Steve Bolger got a pretty handy exit as well. He's just closing the margin down, having a look down the inside, not quite close enough.
You think he should have just stayed close through turn... Oh, he's having a big slide there. Stayed close through turn 1. To be able to make the pass into 2, but as it stands, it's a little bit too far back. Ooh, he almost went too deep there. There was a very thin credit card between those two there.
He's very racy, Steve Bolger. That was a very, very good bit of driving just to pull to the right at the last second to avoid the contact. But I'm with you, Bagzy. You probably could have stayed there in the tracks, but you don't want to stay too close and get all that dirty air and lose a bit of the aero wash through turn 1 because it's a very, very high speed corner. And granted, these cars are very, very similar in terms of height, the Porsche versus the Audi. So the aero would have, he probably would have lost a little bit of that front downforce going into the corner, which is really what you need. And also the high speed part requires the rear wing. Oh, Bolger's very wide. Termo's pounced. Termo's going to try pounce around the outside here at 8. But no, he couldn't hang on to it. But Bolger was very, very loose on this lap. And now Mike Coulston's buying into this as well on Termo. That's allowed him to close right up.
Unseen off screen, Wedding has got past Brenton Foley, so there was a change for the lead off screen, so we didn't see that, but honestly this battle is a bit more interesting.
Yeah, Wedding and Foley are the only two drivers that have been in the 25s. Foley had a pretty poor lap last time, it was a 26.4, and Wedding a 25.8, so that's where that happened. And the flat spot racing number 66 of Mike Coulston already missing the front Honda badge off that car. You can see the big dent in the dead smack in the middle of the front of the car where it should be. Not sure what's happened to that, which means he's had a new somewhere. Steve Bolger's gone off, and Termo's run into the back of him as well. And these two are
both went wide.
They're both gone wide, and this is off at the exit.
And, that was that?
That was Boak. That was
Boak as well.
That was Phil Boak having to recover. And we got safety car. No, we've gotten away with it.
No.
We've gotten away with it. So that was a very, very lucky moment. Now, Thomas Paul was in the dirt, just ahead of them. And Steve Bolger went off wide, and Termo just outbraked himself. So That is, well, both of them are at fault there, and then Boak went very, very deep, obviously being a lap down, but we've gotten away without the need for a full course caution there. Very, very lucky.
Well, Dwayne Davies is happy because he just saw two of the positions he lost spin off in front of him. Mike Coulston is happy because he's now up 4 positions and had to actually do no overtaking so far because everyone's just heading off into the scenery in front of him.
17th place man of Noah Turra started to come in. So too has the number 18, position 18, number 272 of Glenn Miles. They've decided to take service. So that's a very, very early pit stop. I'm not sure maybe where they fueled.
Do they think they can make it to the end from there? Because I'm
don't
not sure
think so.
what the fuel burn on these cars are.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think that they can. We're running the same settings that we ran for the last season of endurance, so I'd be surprised if they can make it home from here. They'd need a miracle. They would need... Oh, Noah Turra's having a bit of an issue there. They are going to need a safety car big time to be able to make that happen. Glenn Miles now coming out as well in a Ferrari and safely away. Back to the head of the field. You're coming back just to the pit stop point there, Bagzy. When we did have the 90-minute races last season and the 120s, you were right. There were 2 stops and 3 stops respectively, and you had to sort of try and dot them out. Although there was the one race at Malaysia where the 90-minute races, they managed to get home on one stop. A couple of the FCR cars got home with just the one stop. So it's possible, but the scenario needs to plan out exactly your way, otherwise it's not going to work. And at the moment, we've been green flag running for 20 minutes, and I dare say you need to get close to that half-hour mark before you even consider taking service.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where you've got to make sure that you don't take your service too early because the race is 60 minutes plus a lap, so you've got to always take into account that extra lap that could have to be done.
Wedding's just starting to try and stretch away little bit by little bit here. His last lap was about 1/10.5 quicker than Foley, and the gap at the moment is 8/10. Doesn't look like it's 8/10, but as you can see on the timing screen, it definitely is 8/10. Foley's just clawed a touch of that back in the first sector, just 1/10. How's Lewis going to go when they get to the second timing intermediate here? Meanwhile, off screen, Will Devonish has made his way up to P4 now, so he's 20 seconds off the race lead here as the gap extends out between the two top runners to a second overall at the moment. So Wedding in first, Foley second, and then the 2 JP Simshed cars, Osrob and Devonish in that order, a third and fourth. Then it's an FCR 5-6 after that. So FCR have not had a bad start to this race.
Yeah, they've both improved significantly on their positions. Devonish up 14 though, which is absolutely brilliant, and lapping at essentially the same pace as Osrob. 1:26.5 last lap for Osrob. Devonish is about to come across the line, and he will post a 1:26.4. So he's actually slowly closing in. There's about 12 seconds between them, but potentially through pit stops and strategy, could see that gap close up and there be a bit of a JP Simshed inter-team battle.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to seeing what Will could do this season. He had a pretty strong, final third of the season last season out in the Lamborghinis. Did pretty well at the Road America finale. His only win, as we said earlier in the broadcast, came at the Circuit of the Americas aboard that Lamborghini, but he was in position in several of the races to really make a good fist of it last year. The first race in particular, he had that really great ding-dong battle with Lewis Wedding in the early part of the Barcelona race, and then unfortunately the internet issues came and ended up terminating him from the race. So he was in second place when that disconnection happened, so he could have had a much, much better championship if that had fallen his way, and he did have a couple of poor early results following that DC at Barcelona as well. And this is despite the fact also that this man, just with the Belong sponsorship on the car, actually works for Belong. So you would think that he would have his internet issues quite well sorted, but clearly not the case. But at the moment, everything is smooth sailing for the pilot aboard the number 15 JP Simshed Porsche, and he's made his way up into fourth place, as you said, actually up 14 spots, and just slowly starting to close that gap down to Rob.
Yeah, although that lap he was a little bit slower at the front, about a second between Wedding and Foley, but last lap a 126.008 and a 126.070, so 700ths between them. There is more to come from this battle at the front, as it's still very, very close. Something that we neglected to mention is tyres, and how if you look after your tyres, you can potentially, in the 90-minute races, make them go for the whole race. But at the end, you will be on very, very worn tyres. It is 10 seconds less in the pit stop, though, so you do have a decision to make. If you can preserve your tyres, then you might want to go for it. But a track like this, especially with the first corner being such a long and fast left-hander, it kills the tyres. You know, I'm just having a look at Wedding's tyres. It looks like the tyres on his right-hand side are about 15% more worn than on the left-hand side, just because of those G-forces in the anti-clockwise track.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You can see it here. Turn 1, very, very high speed. Turn 2, steady state hairpin corner. They get a little bit of respite through these couple of corners here, 3 and 4. And the left-hand side takes over. Then you've got the right-handers at 5, 6. The sweeper at 7. And then you've got the big, long last couple of corners at turns 10 and 11 as well. So the right-hand side of the car doing a very, very large amount of work through the high-speed corners. So it is to be expected that the tyres would be a little bit more worn on that side of the car. Here's another example as Foley goes through the sweeper here at turn 7, downhill and then under braking for 8. We've still got all the runners in this race, most importantly, as we near the half-hour mark, which is great to see. Normally we would have had a couple of DNF results by now, even though we've got 4 cars a lap down. Now, Steve Bolger's gone a lap down as well, so I take it he's probably taken service as well, as Noah Turra and Glenn Miles. And obviously Phil Boak, we know, has been through the lane several times already.
Yeah, it looks like Bolger's first sector was 1 minute 24, so that's indicating that he crossed the finish line because his pit box is after the finish line. Looks like Matt Williams had a scruffy last lap. He did a 129, the people around him doing 127s, which is why Lime Mitch is now right on his tail yet again.
Well, Lime Mitch was ahead of him for a little bit, and obviously he'd caught Lime Mitch and gotten past, and then now he's come back to him.
Yeah, this train is all... It seems like it's wanting to come back together again, plus with an added sprinkle of Boak in the middle of it, albeit a lap down.
Yeah, Phil Boak just in the back of shot there, Phil Boak. He's in behind Thomas Paul, and then behind him is Mike Coulston. There's Mike Coulston in the NSX back there. But 6th, 7th, 8th, Thomas Paul, and all doing times in the mid to high 27s. Wedding and Foley are the only drivers that are under 1 minute 27 at the moment. So Wedding last lap at 25.8, Foley 26.2, and they've been consistently about 6 or so tenths quicker than anybody else on the track. So coming back to your earlier point here, Bagzy, about tyres, if they're going so quickly, whether or not they're using up more tyres than some of the people behind, such as an Ozrob or a Will Devonish, so those guys playing themselves into contention to maybe not take tyres at the stop and then roll the dice and just do fuel only.
Well, I have a look through the field, and it's actually just Wedding is really good at preserving his tyres compared to everyone else. He has almost the best tyres out there, apart from people who've pit, obviously. So he's looking after them better than Ozrob. Is probably the reason he's dropped back, is he's wearing through his tyres a bit faster, which is why his times have dropped off, because his best lap is a 125.7, which is only 2 tenths off Wedding's best and 4 tenths off Foley's best. But he's doing 127s to their 126s.
They're starting to put a couple of drivers a lap down here, the race leaders. This gap has now gotten out to 2 seconds between Wedding and Foley. They're starting to round up a few more of the cars. So not only has the first couple of cars that had taken service gone through, but Mitchell Hathaway, I think, may have taken service again. He's dropped down to 16th. Rhodey and Greg Turra have now been lapped as well. And I must say, shout out to Rhodey. He's actually been doing pretty well in these GT cars and doing some pretty respectable times. About 3 seconds a lap slower than what the race
Termo's
leaders
in.
do. But
Termo, the first person to blink.
And we've lost our first runner too just now in Glenn Miles as well. So I'm not sure, do we have a bit of a replay as to what's happened to Glenn? Yes, we do. And he's gone straight on at 6. And, and that's... Well, he's kept it out of the barriers, or up until that point, where he then backed it into the fence. And you're right,
So he's
Termo
almost
is in.
kept it. So Termo, the first person to pit. Yeah, so I guess Glenn Miles might have just... Yeah, it's an interesting one. You think his car would still have been fine after that, but we'll see what happens. It looks like Greg Turra has also pit, so we've got Termo and Turra, the first two to blink. Too many T words there.
Too many T words.
We've got... So that's going to be interesting for Termo, because he was around about Dwayne Davies sort of area, so with exactly 30 minutes to go, you think we'll see a flurry of pit stops. Bolger has actually come out ahead of Termo, though, so Bolger's early pit stop, if he can make it go to the end, seems to have worked for him.
Well, keeping in mind, too, that Bolger and Termo were involved in that little collision between each other as well, so you kind of expect that they would actually be pretty close on track in terms of where they ended up after their stops.
Mitch Hathaway has also got himself in there now, despite having that penalties and having pit as well, I believe. So he's actually pulling himself up quite well, despite having been hamstrung in the start.
No, Mitch Hathaway's not doing too badly. We look at his lap times at the moment. He's come out of the pits that time, but his best laps are 26.5. So he's got pace in terms of pace that he can use to live with the front running cars, but it's just simply a case of he's way too far down the field. I mean, he's a lap down. He really needs this to work well for him, and a safety car to come out in order to actually get somewhere.
Ozrob is in. First of our leaders in.
Alright, so just beyond the halfway mark, he decides to pull the trigger and he's into the lane. Now, pit box order is going to be very, very important here. We're looking from where he is in the lane. So he's 6th down the lane, Ozrob. Will Devonish goes through. He'll inherit 3rd place. Some of these drivers, if they're going to come in close together, the pit lane order will be very, very important. Now, most of the teammates are paired off, so Lewis Wedding's the first pit box. He's the the earliest pit box in the lane. Then come the 2 PBF Team Vodafone cars, the 2 FCRs, the 2 JP Sim sheds, and then we get into Steve Bolger, and then the 2 Playboy cars make up the top 10.
It's like Matt Williams is in as well, I think. Is that Matt? Yep, Matt Williams is in. Coulston's in. Now, something to consider is that if the front runners of Wedding and Foley come in, as Foley had a bit of a mistake last lap and was 2 seconds slower than Wedding, if they come in, then there's a gaggle of cars about a minute behind them that could be coming in as they are trying to leave. So they might have to wait for people who are coming in potentially, and that will cost them time in the pits.
Well, here comes the race leader, Lewis Wedding, to put a number of these cars in the pits lap down. Now, this race lead between himself and Brenton Foley is blown out to nearly 5.5 seconds. In actual
He's
fact,
actually going to put Ozrob a lap down.
Yeah, he is too. Now, that means that Ozrob is... actually, where was he in the list? So Ozrob was 8th.
He was 3rd.
Overall on the
So
road
he's
now.
now
So
8th.
he's the first of the cars a lap down. So now this is going to be very, very interesting when it comes out to the way the pit stops shake out. Can Ozrob stick with Lewis Wedding now with some good rubber underneath him? And can he jump up a bit further? Maybe even jump Foley, because Foley's has been dropping away from the back of Wedding for the last lap or two now. And this could be a positional gain, not just for Ozrob. Potentially Will Devonish might be playing himself into a little bit of contention here as well. Now Foley is 5.5 seconds behind Wedding. Devonish is 30 seconds off the race lead. So I mean, Devonish got a little while to go. As Lewis Wedding, you just saw the little cog pop up there for Lewis Wedding. Maybe he might be in this lap. It's a possibility. We'll stay with the race leader.
Lime Mitch and Dwayne Davies are both in, along with Brendan Ross.
Wedding off the final corner. And he's making a beeline for the pit entry. And yes, he is. In he comes. Race leader in.
Foley continues on.
Foley continues on. Now, let's take a look at what Lewis decides to do. Tyres going on the car. So he's decided to pull the trigger and stop for the full service. Now, That'll put Devonish has got a lapped runner behind him. That'll be the 10th place car of Matt Williams, who's already been in for service, and Will makes a beeline for the pits as well. And I thought for a minute that Matt Williams was coming, but he decided to just grab a bit of a slipstream as Benjamin Rhodes comes in as well. So this is all starting to play out. Now,
Wayne Davies is fed out right behind Bolger, Coulston and Hathaway, so he's still going to be in that battle.
So Foley's still going. Lewis is still in the pit lane and has taken tyres, and so too has Devonish has taken tyres and fuel as well. So in comes Thomas Paul in back of shot. Now, where is Lewis Wedding going to feed out into this? Has he timed this perfectly? I think he's just going to feed in. Well, Thomas Paul's come in. He's going to feed in behind the 15th place man, Josh Ben. So he's going to come out into clean air. So that's beautifully timed for Lewis Wedding. He's going to come out with no traffic around him at all.
We've got a minute between Wedding and Foley at this point, as Foley's about to come in. So we'll see if Foley, that extra lap, if he's able to put in a little bit less fuel.
He's in back of shot.
Quite close.
He's in back of shot. So just as Will Devonish is leaving, Foley is in. And Will Devonish is going to leave with Ben Rhodes ahead of him. So Ben Rhodes will be a lap down. So Devonish will be able to slip past. But the race leader is now in. And Lewis Wedding's already over the back end of the circuit. He's actually down at turn 6. So I dare say this is going to be set to be a net gain for Lewis Wedding here, but the real question is going to be, is it going to be a net gain for Oz Rob? Because where's Rob at the moment? He's actually, I reckon he's made a mistake on this outlap, Oz Rob, because he was not too far behind Wedding when he came out of the pits.
Devonish is right on him now.
Devonish's not too far away either, so with all the stops over and done with, so Foley in the lane.
I think if Foley's fueled right here, he could get out. If he gets out now, he'll probably be very close with Wedding.
No, he's rolling now.
Here he goes.
He's rolling now, but this is going to be tight.
Wedding's going down. Yeah, no, he's going to... There he goes. They just passed now.
So
Wedding... So it's going to be a bit of a gap still, about the same as it was before.
Yeah, Wedding into turn 1 and gone. Foley's exited the lane now, and we want to get out pretty quick because...
Ozrob's just got onto the main straight now.
Because here comes one of the Turras. That is the 22 car belonging to Noah Turra, I believe. And a yellow flag now, or just very, very briefly there in sector number 1. So Foley's coming. Let's get a split time when they get down to the intermediate here. 6 seconds, the gap. So it hasn't blown out too terribly. It was about 5.2, 5.3 when they came in. So he's lost a little bit of time, Foley, but now he's got to put the hammer down.
Yeah, but 6 seconds, you think that a driver of a Wedding's caliber, that's, you've got to get basically a quarter of a second a lap just to be behind him at the end of the race. And we've seen that Wedding is like a metronome so far tonight, and he'll be very difficult to catch up because Foley's made a couple mistakes, and that's where that gap has come from. Wedding has made none.
It's blowing out too. It's blowing out more and more and more. 6.7 at the second timing intermediate now, so Wedding's really turned up the heat quite substantially. And we saw this in a number of races last season that Wedding had won, where he was sort of just hanging in there for the opening stint just to see what sort of car he had underneath him, and then really turn the wick up when it got into the final stints. And the gap is now nearly 7 seconds, so we're a little bit deep there at turn 1. Sorry, it's on turn 1, turn 2, a little bit deep, but he recovers that. And he's got 22 minutes and change now, Lewis Wedding, to drive to the line. Still a couple of drivers just in taking service. Now, Matt Williams has come in again. I'm not sure what that's all about, but he's dropped down to 15th place. And obviously, he's actually did not finish. So something's happened to Matt Williams. So he didn't have a good start to last season. He pulled off that stunning pass around the outside at turn 1. Unfortunately, something's happened to Matt Williams. He's out of this race. But it gives us an opportunity to quickly cycle through the field with 20 minutes and a little bit to go. So Wedding the race leader by just under 7 seconds. Back to Brenton Foley in the PBF team Vodafone Viper SRT. Ozrob 15 seconds behind Foley, but the gap between himself and his teammate Will Devonish is now well under 10 seconds. We'll see if he can try and snaffle a podium in the last 20 minutes of this race. Brenton Ross has had a solid drive, started P8, he's up to P5. One of the championship front runners from last season, and a Le Mans 2-hour winner last season. Lime Mitch in the guest Ferrari, the 333 lime green, black and red Ferrari, along with Thomas Paul having a good humdinger of a battle over positions 6 and 7. Now this is shaking out pretty well for Mitchell Hathaway, having that stop-go penalty earlier in the race. He's actually recovered to P8 with all the fighting and squabbling that's been going on, so that's a pretty solid debut for him. Steve Bolger's with him for company in P9. Mike Coulston's managed to sneak the Honda NSX into the top 10, just ahead of Termo in the Jack Daniels 715 Chevy Camaro. Dwayne Davies is quietly plodding along. He's back to where he started in P12, honing in on the back of Termo. And then Phil Boakes had a horror opening round, several drive-throughs and an off as well. He has
got himself back onto the lead lap, though, which is quite impressive.
You're right, he has got himself back onto the lead lap, but I dare say he's going to have to take service again a little bit later on, having stopped rather early. Josh Ben, as we did suspect, would be leading the assault for PBF team Traxstar, and he is. He's ahead of his teammate by a couple of spots. The Turras, Greg and Noah, 15th and 16th, and the last of the classified runners is Rhodey, or Benjamin Rhodes, P17. Back to our race leader. Brenton Foley sets the fastest lap time at 25.186 in this race. So the margin now 6.6 seconds. So didn't really take a huge chunk out of Wedding that time around. They took 4/10 out. As we work lap 28 of what we expect to be around 41 to 44 laps, somewhere in that duration. As our race leader just starting to encounter a little bit of lap traffic here. This will be the number 91 car of Josh Ben that he's coming up to the back of just here out of turn 6. Bagzy, what do you got your eyes on out there at the moment?
Let's have a look at Thomas Paul and Lime Mitch are still inseparable. They've been about 2/10ths of a second apart from each other, and their last laps were 1,000th of a second apart as Paul goes down the inside into turn 2. So close to touching there. Lime Mitch is going to have the better line into turn 3, and he takes it. They're coming up on Boak as well, who's a lap down after just coming out of the pits, and that means Lime Mitch is not going to be able to get the inside line and Paul there because they both had to go around Boak. So good job for Paul there, using the traffic to his advantage. And there's a yellow flag out there somewhere.
Yeah, he did a very good job. We've got a... just looking to see what that is. Yeah, we have got a yellow flag. Oh, it's one of the PBF cars. I think that's Rhodey around. Yeah, it is indeed, because Josh Ben's gone through. So that's Benjamin Rhodes in the 010. So he's had a moment down there at, looks like coming out of... Yeah, just lit it up out of turn 5. And full 720 spin, basically. Or 540 spin, and did the right thing, stayed off the racing line, and has eventually just waited for everybody to come in. He's had a hit in the rear end of that car as well. Look at the dent in that car, so he's been punted at some point, but gets himself going again. So staying green. Thankfully, we haven't had a safety car this race, but I'll tell you what, it would spice it up if we got one.
It would certainly bring the last couple of laps, make them a bit more interesting, as Dwayne Davies has gone very wide at the final corner out onto the grass there for no position change because he's sort of on his own there, but it does mean he's no longer getting closer to Termo and Coulston like he wanted to, and being able to crack that top 10 position.
Yeah, but
Lime Mitch has got past Thomas Paul again as well to turn 2, so we're and Boak is just hanging about with them, you know, looking for that participation medal, being a lap down.
And this is a great battle between these guys as Wedding just snatches the fastest lap away from Foley by a couple of thousandths, not by much, only by 6 thousandths of a second, 4 thousandths of a second that was actually. And that gap between Wedding and Foley is now around the 6.3 seconds mark.
Wedding just wanting to deny Foley anything nice in this race.
Well, unfortunately, you can't take the honours of Grand Chelem for this one, because Grand Chelem means that you need the pole, you need the fastest lap, and you need to lead every lap of the race. Now, the pole went to Ozrob, And the fastest lap is currently with Wedding, but Wedding has not led every lap of this race either, so you won't be able to take that on this particular round. Boke's doing pretty well to hang with these guys at the moment. Obviously, he can repass. He's a lap down. He can repass these guys if he has the speed to do so, but then he needs to clear off from them so he doesn't get the blue flags. Now, coming into view in the back of this shot, you might have just caught a glimpse of it, is Mitchell Hathaway. He's only 3 seconds behind this battle, now 2.9, so this could become a very, very spicy battle in the next 15 minutes for what is 6th, 7th, and if Hathaway gets involved, 8th.
Well, he was a second faster than Thomas Paul and 6/10 faster than Lime Mitch on that lap, so he will be there very soon, and he is, from the looks of it, dragging Bolger along with him. Bolger, his lap time was not too much slower either.
You took the words right out of my mouth, that he was dragging Bolger along with him after Bolger's little bits of trouble he's had with Termo earlier in the race. He managed to stay ahead of him, as Foley's now taken back the fastest lap from Wedding. In actual fact, he was 0.4 of a second quicker than Wedding that time around. The gap, and now down to about 4 seconds. So that's really, well, that was according to the last timing intermediate, so that's really, really closing up again as Foley tries to mount a last-minute surge toward the front of the field. Now, keeping your eyes on Mitchell Hathaway here, that gap was ebbing and flowing. Look at that, it's just chopped immediately down to 2.3 seconds. He lost a lot of time, about a 10th in Sector 1, but he absolutely gained it hand over fist in Sector 2. Now, the Mercedes is very, very quick in a straight line in the last series, but there has been a little bit of performance adjustment with some of these cars to try and bring them closer together for this 4th season of endurance in AMS Oz. And Hathaway now only 2.1 away. He's coming. He's got pace, this guy. In actual fact, we found out a little bit of news earlier in the week after TCR Oz. Those of you who are avid viewers of the AMS Oz Super 2 will probably remember all the way back to the Phillip Island round, where the teammates, Hathaway and Dougal Salonga, came together. In actual fact, one took the other out. Actually, BDS took out Mitchell Hathaway. Now, at the time, we found out that they were living together as housemates, and they didn't speak to each other for 45 minutes after the race was over. And they were just sitting down and watching the stream quietly until BDS tried to apologise, and Mitchell just turned around and said, don't even try.
Gotta love a bit of drama, don't you?
Just a little bit of drama.
It spices the whole thing up, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, they're still they race together in iRacing, and obviously racing together again here in AMS Oz whenever they can. But no, good guys all around, both of them. Very, very good, and very, very sporting. I know BDS has tried a few lunges in a couple of races that haven't come off, and some that have, but no, they're going about their business the right way, and it's really good to see. And this gap is now down to 2 seconds. Let's just keep an eye on what it is across the line this time around. He's been taking...
Bloke is not doing Paul any favours by trying to get past him. You think Paul and Lime Mitch should probably just let Boke go, because he is a bit faster than them at the moment.
1.3.
It's just holding them up.
1.3 seconds the margin. Bolger 1.2 further back, but you're right. This is not doing Thomas Paul any favours. In fact, Lime Mitch has managed to kick away a little bit here. Just the tune of about half a dozen car lengths or so.
I think Paul should just let Boke through, hook onto the back of him, and try and make a sneaky pass as Boke unlaps himself from Lime Mitch as well.
Let's go back to the head of the field and have a look at how this margin's closing down. It was close to about 4 seconds at one point. It's now back out to 5.7. So last lap times around. Actually,
big crash. Paul's had a big crash into the wall there.
Where is he on the track? You're right. He's gone off into the tyre barrier. And that's around the back section. So we haven't got a safety car, but let's have a look at this. Let's see what he did, because this was going to start to get interesting, this battle. He's come through turn 5, and he's done what Rhodey did. Oh, that's a big high-speed one, just a lot worse. So he got out on that outside, well, it's not AstroTurf, it's actually concrete at turn 5, and just lit the car up, and around it went. So that surrenders what was essentially 7th place on the road, now to Mitchell Hathaway, and also Steve Bolger went through as well.
See how his car's handling. It seems like he might be slightly right hand down, maybe, based on how he's It seems like he was drifting a little
Yeah,
bit.
it doesn't look
Yeah,
like it's tracking straight, even down the front straight. You can tell
We'll
he's
see how
battling.
it goes into this high-speed corner here.
Oh, I was worried for a minute there, Bagzy, and I'm still
no,
worried now.
There it goes.
And
Yeah,
there it
I'm
goes.
very worried.
Yep,
Off
and
he goes.
I think that's it. I was worried the minute he put 2 right-hand side tyres on the grass there, because that's a very high-speed turn 1. And is he going to keep going is the next question. He looks like he is. He looks like he might try and at least limp this around to the pits and try and get it repaired. But yeah, the minute he put 2 wheels on the grass there, I knew he wasn't going to, and with the steering damage that was likely to be on that car, he was never going to make turn 1.
No, that is quite unfortunate. Brenton Foley is actually closing up on Lewis Wing. Last lap it was 4/10. Lap before it was 3/10.
And just looking a bit
Lap
further back
before
in the field,
4/10.
sorry to cut you off there, Mitchell Hathaway has closed down Lime Mitch, something shocking, and there was flashing of the lights as well from Mitchell Hathaway. I'm not sure what's going on here, but maybe just entitling himself to a bit of space here at turn 9, going the long way round turn 10. He's got to be careful here because Lime Mitch is underneath him. We just caught to that battle as they were going down into turn 8, and I don't know whether Mitchell was expecting Lime Mitch
He's unhappy, it seems.
He's unhappy at something. I'm wondering whether he feels that he got turned down onto, but we know that using the lights is a little bit of a no-no unless you're passing lap traffic. Side by side through turn 1 on the inside. Hathaway in the 31, the Mercedes-Benz, manages to get the job done. That is a wonderful passing move at turn 1. Coming from a long way back, Steve Bolger just not quite close enough to stick his nose in the gap that disappeared very quickly.
Well, that was a high-speed, high-stakes manoeuvre there. Hathaway clearly unhappy. I think if we went to an in-car shot there, we might be able to see him doing a Heinz-Harold Frentzen and going one hand through the corner and flipping the bird off with the other hand, because it did seem quite angry, all that light flashing.
There might be a little bit of obviously something posted to the Stewards channel after the race is over to do with that, if that's any indication of what's gone on. But yeah, just down here at turn number 8, Mitchell was closing in on Lime Mitch, and they came together. So I'm wondering whether he was unhappy with the movement under braking or something there, but he really had closed it down quite a lot. Now Steve Bolger's going to try and have a go here at some point, I'd imagine, as well.
Thomas Paul has DNF'd, unfortunately, with that damage.
Third retirement for Thomas Paul, unfortunately. He's out of this race. And Phil Boak's still doing a commendable job to hang on to these guys, and he'll at least pick up another position here.
Foley's made a mistake on the last lap. He got a track cut somewhere because he doesn't have a lap time in there, so I think that's what's lost him about 2 seconds. So I think the front running battle is done, barring a mistake from Lewis Wedding, and that is a very high bar to achieve because he does not make mistakes.
You're absolutely right. Lime Mitch still doing his best to go with Mitchell Hathaway here. Now Phil Boak had an opportunity to slip up the inside of Steve Bolger back there a few moments ago, but he decided not to do that because he knows that he's got to have the pace to run away from him, otherwise he's just going to get blue flagged again and they'll have to let Steve back through.
So we've got a couple of battles going on here. We've got Devonish closing still on Osrob. That gap's down to 3 seconds. So Devonish looking for the last spot on the podium. He was half a second faster last lap. Osrob's about to come across the line now, so we'll see what his time is.
He's got him in visual sight here as well.
1:27.2.
And Devonish is 26.9. So great job.
So 2/10. You'll need to do a bit more to catch him before the end of the race, though. And also a bit further back, Coulston and Termo are still going at it. They've been at it for a good chunk of this race.
Yeah. Now you can see here Will Devonish is running the 2013 Porsche, the 997 GT3R, same as Osrob, just a little bit further behind. You can see the in 13th place, that's Greg Turra, just there, the green car, that's the 991. So actually we'll pick up Greg Turra, just take a bit of a look. So there's Devonish in the 997, and then we go back to Turra in the 991. So they look very, very similar, just a little bit of subtle bodywork differences and a little bit of aero difference in the cars. But they definitely are 2 different makes of Porsche. So a little bit of strengths and weaknesses.
Different makes of Porsche is sort of like different shades of grey. There's really not that much difference. You can just call it grey, can't you?
Yes, correct. We know we've had this drama before. We were at Bathurst 12 hour with ARW, and we tried to get dragged off by people in a drop-top Porsche that his mother had paid for, or his father had paid for, and promptly had stalled it when he tried to drag us away from the lights. So That just goes to the Porsche, the moniker that not all Porsches are shit, but some of the drivers behind them certainly are, but not in this GT3 competition. There are certainly some very, very good pilots in that have the hands on the steering wheel of a Porsche, whether they are 991 or a 997.
Indeed. I'm always going to argue that all Porsches are shit, but I am heavily entrenched against Porsches at this point. I can't really go back. Line Mitch and Steve Bolger are still very close on track. There's less than a second between them.
Steve Bolger nearly sent it there. And Mitch has
Line
gone
Mitch is
off. Oh, wow. He probably got distracted by what just happened. So Steve Bolger at the final corner just says, thank you very much. Let's have a look at this on replay, because he just... so Steve Bolger just sort of sent it. It was this corner here. He just got a little bit of a break. He just sent it a bit too much. And then Line Mitch just thought, oh, great beauty, I can put this one, I'll put this to bed, and then just promptly understeered off at the final corner.
There's no touch there, was there?
No, absolutely not.
Definitely lots of space between them. Mitch just got on the power a little bit too early and just understeered straight off.
Yeah, we had the helicopter.
Quite unfortunate.
We had the helicopter shot for it live, and all of a sudden it was just Steve had tried to send it. There was no touching at all, and then Lion Mitch just, in sympathy, just understeered wide on the exit of the final corner, and Steve just said thank you very much and just drove straight on past. So that's P7 for Steve Bolger for Gravel Rash Racing. As you said, he started 4th, and he's now ended up P7. So not too bad of a recovery drive, but it definitely could have been better for Steve Bolger if not for some of those early dramas.
Poor old Brendan Ross is having a very lonely race in 5th. He's got 15 seconds to the person behind him, 15 seconds to the person ahead. He's the only person on the main straight. He's almost the only person in his sector at any given time, which is rather impressive given there's still 16 people on the track, but he's not actually seen anyone for quite a while. But people who are seeing other people, Devonish is seeing Osrob getting bigger and bigger, and that gap is less than 3 seconds. With 4 minutes to go and probably 3 laps.
Yeah, it's 2.7 the margin now between those two. The gap at the front has blown out. It's now out to 8 seconds, so I think that one is just about as good as done for tonight's proceedings for Lewis Wedding. He's only got 4 minutes and change plus the lap that will be when he crosses the line to complete the race. So this stage tracking around about the 1 minute, about 42 laps, I would say, as it's which is inside our estimate of 41 to 44. It all depended on the pace, and of course we have the rolling starts to consider. We have the pit stops to consider when we do those calculations as well, and we have safety car intervention to consider. We don't really factor in the safety car. We try and factor in the green flag laps when we come to making our lap time estimates.
Well, Devonish was almost a second faster that lap. The gap is less than 2 seconds.
And they'll be in the same Discord chat as each other as well. They'll be working away on they'll know each other's coming. Would have been working away on their setups together to try and challenge the likes of Lewis Wedding and Brenton Foley and even the FCR teammates this season. They're off to a pretty good start, having started in for P3 and P4 on the road. So Osrob down from his pole position start, and Will Devonish up from what was pretty much rear of grid, aside from Josh Byrne, who started from the pit lane, and probably the drive of the day for Will Devonish. If only his dramas during qualifying would have been resolved, maybe we would have seen some real turn of speed out of Devonish. That's a little bit of a moment there going down into turn 8.
I've got to say, if Devonish and Osrob are in the same Discord, I'd imagine that Will Devonish would be hoping for a soundboard that has the Jaws theme music on it, so he can just sort of start getting into the head of Osrob.
It's just like a shark, just circling, and you just want the da-dum, da-dum, bump, 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 bump noise, I imagine. Is that what you're referring to? But exactly.
They come across the line. Osrob 127.5, Devonish 126.8, 7 tenths. That lap.
Is he going to run out of time?
4 seconds.
That's
1 minute 50 to go. Lewis Wedding is going through turn 8 now.
Yep.
So he will come across the line.
He's got lap traffic.
125. I think it'll be very close at the line, so we might get 3 more laps from here depending on when Wedding gets across the line.
Well, it's a minute 30 on the clock now, and he's been doing lap times in the minute 25s and 26s, so he's going to cross the line
it's
with
not
about a
quite.
minute 18 or so
Get
left on
two
the
more
clock.
laps.
So yeah, 2 more laps. So we're going to get 42 will be the distance. So 2 more laps for our race leader. So that gives...
That's less than a second though from Devonish to Osrob, so
Yeah.
Devonish is definitely going to catch.
Oh, look
with
at that.
2 laps to go, basically.
He's in visual sight right now. And the other battle that you're referring to, Mike Coulston and Termo, is getting very, very juicy as well. That's down to less than a second as well. So the NSX at the moment hanging on ahead of the Chevy Camaro. I get the impression if Termo gets a sniff here, he's going to send that Camaro, much like a stamp on a and an envelope and a letter. He's just going to lick it, stamp it, and send it, as we used to say back in the day.
Devonish has the slipstream.
Back to the battle for third overall on the road. Down to 7/10 through
And
turn 1.
Even though there's only 30 seconds left, they've just crossed the line now, so they've got 2 laps from there.
Correct. They have 2 laps because they are on the lead lap. So they have to do as many laps as the race leader does. Just the 3 retirements in Thomas Paul, Matt Williams and Glenn Miles. We lost them on laps 33, 24 and 17 respectively. Thankfully we haven't had any real big incidents that have caused any safety car dramas, but our race leader in amongst
0.
Yep, our race leader in amongst the traffic, and he commences his final lap. Let's go back to the battle for third while we wait for our race leader to finish off the final lap. Osrob will now have to start thinking about where he can run defence, and the important thing for him is there's no traffic in the way. The nearest car up the road is Josh Benz. These guys are just coming through turns 9 and 10 now. Josh Benz just exited 12, and turn 11. He's onto the front straight. So who's going to get the better exit here, or is it going to hold line astern?
Yeah, because in terms of a team's perspective, this will be a massive amount of points and will put them a long way ahead of everyone else and in good stead for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm not
But
sure.
on the other hand, Devonish is probably looking for a driver of the day honour.
I think he's got the driver of the day honour anyway for me, as Osrob just kicks up a little bit of dust on the exit of turn number 2. They're taking similar lines through turn 2. Let's go back to our race leader. He's only got a couple of corners to go, and he's going to start this race, or start this season off the way he finished last season, and that's with a win. And he was the only multiple winner in the last season's championship with 4, and he's been the dominant force in endurance GT racing across AMS Oz, and tonight's no different.
While that was happening, Ozra went a little bit wide out of turn 5. So it is now very close there as Foley comes across the line for second place.
Yep, so
it's going to have to be a do or die move into the final corner for Devonish.
Well, this final corner is going to come into play here, because if Devonish can sneak up the inside, if he's close enough and get himself alongside his JP Simshed teammate, then he'll be entitled to the space. But no, they just continue to run line astern here. So Osrob's managed to hold on here. So Devonish pretty much, he got to the back of Osrob, but he just couldn't do anything about it. So the pole man finishes P3. Devonish will finish P4. And then we come all the way back to this lonely drive for the 444 of Brendan Ross. So he's done pretty well to get up from P8, and just getting a little bit leery off the final corner, just deciding to light it up. So he's going to come home in P5. So a good, respectable finish for Brendan Ross. Mitchell Hathaway started P6, had the stop-go penalty, had the pit stop, and is going to come home to finish where he started. So hard to believe that
that's a very good job.
That's an extremely good job on debut from Mitchell Hathaway.
He's finished 30 seconds off the lead, so
with a stop go.
Yeah, he could have been there or thereabouts, or definitely on the podium with that.
Yep.
Without that stop-go penalty. That's unfortunate. I'm wondering what caused that for him.
Steve Bolger 7th, Line Mitch 8th. Mike Coulston has managed to hold off Termo at the flag. So In actual fact, the margin, look at the margin on that, 0.1 or 13 hundredths of a second between Coulston and Termo at the flag. That was the closest finishing margin that we had for any position, even closer than the Ozrob Will Devonish battle. So that was really, really close between 9th and 10th place. So that is the first of our 60-minute races and the first race of our new season finished. Bagzy, what did you make of that? That was a bit of an entertaining start to the series.
Yeah, it was definitely an entertaining first race for us. It was plenty of stuff going on through the pack as well. It helps when we've got these bigger fields and there can be lots of midfield battles. So it was quite good. And of course, once again, a dominant performance from Lewis Wedding. He's stamping his authority on this series straight away, as you said, starting as he finished last season in Victory Lane.
Well, he does start the way he finished last season in Victory Lane, and he joins us now. So, Lewis, just about business as usual, in the thick of it early, and once you got to the front, you sort of drove away from it at the end of the day.
I wouldn't say I drove away from it. But yeah, obviously start wasn't ideal. But just sort of sat behind Ozrob for a couple laps and then made a little mistake because someone wiped out the 150 board at turn 2, so I sort of outbroke myself a little bit, and that allowed Foley through. And then from there, for the rest of the first stint, I was just sort of happy for other guys just to set the pace. And then when I saw the other two, when I saw Rob and Foley sort of battling, I thought, well, here's a chance to at least get one of those spots back, and got Ozrob, and then obviously Foley stepped the pace up just a little bit. Sort of dropped Ozrob a little bit, and then it was just from there. Even though there was a little bit in reserve, it was pretty tough slog, so the pace was pretty hot.
Yeah, the pace definitely was very, very hot, and before the broadcast we did get a bit of a tip that it was going to be a very, very closely fought race and very close championship, and the lap times did reflect that, especially quite early. And sometimes, even when the gap got out to 6 or 7 seconds between yourself and Foley, Brenton would peg it back a little bit, but then just some of those mistakes would creep in, whereas it seemed to be relatively trouble-free for yourself.
Yeah, aside from that, just outbreaking myself at turn 2 early on, I didn't really make any mistakes. I know Foley towards the end of the first stint made one that sort of allowed me to get by, but aside from that, yeah, no mistakes really from my end. And I don't know if it was just car related or he just made little mistakes, but towards the end of each stint, towards the end of the race and at the end of the first stint, it seemed like his tyres or his lap time sort of fell away a little bit. But especially after the pit stop, I was driving as hard as I could. Well, at least not for the first lap or two. I still wanted to gauge the pace, but after that, I was driving as fast as I could, and Foley was probably at 2 or 3 tenths a lap faster until about 5 or 6 laps to go, and then the gap started just to eke out a little bit.
Well, congratulations on opening your account this season with a win and setting yourself up on good pace to defend your title from last season.
A long way to go, but cheers, and obviously big thank you to everybody that showed up tonight, and even those that couldn't make it. Obviously, Father's Day. Obviously, some guys couldn't make it, but to see such a big field and have a couple of guest cars as well is really encouraging. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, certainly is. I echo that sentiment. 19 cars and it's outstanding turnout for the opening round GT3 series, second series for 2019. Second and third place men are with Josh Bagzy, and he's got Brenton Foley.
Yeah, Brenton, second place today. Not a bit far away from first place, further than you probably would have liked. Was it down to, it looked like it might have been a bit down to tyres towards the end of the stint where you were losing a bit of time, because obviously close to the start, but not so much at the ends of the stints.
Yeah, I was pushing really hard and was, almost trading fastest laps with Lewis for a while on the end of it. But, absolutely tore strips off the tyres. But with about 10 minutes to go, the gap was still at around 6 seconds, and I kind of made the decision that I wasn't going to catch him, so I kind of just went into damage control and made sure I kept it on the track and didn't do anything silly, and kind of just cruised at home. But yeah, the car was really, really quick today, just over the long stint. Probably the first 20 minutes, it was amazing. The last about 10 of the stint, it would really drop off with the tyres, but it's something to work on, and I'm happy with the result.
Yeah, we did see a little bit towards the end of the second stint, towards the end of the race, where it did look like you were closing in. You're getting a few tenths each lap, but then you drop back by about a couple seconds. Was there a mistake there that we didn't see, or was it just, like you said, easing off and being careful?
In the first stint, there was a mistake at the last corner. The second stint, I got sideways once, and then at that point, I kind of looked at the gap and realized that I'm not going to catch him, so I just backed it off.
Fair enough. Well, a good start to the season with the second place, and see if you can go one better in the rest of the season.
Thanks very much.
We've got Ozrob here as well, third place. Started from pole, so obviously dropping back will be a little bit disappointing. And at the end there, it looked like your teammate was definitely giving you a bit of a scare towards the end. Was there a bit of communication there that you're just going to not battle and come home 3-4, or were you able to keep him held off and he was going for it?
Yeah, thanks. Well, definitely team orders at the end. He could have gone by me, but I think 3-4 either way was our goal today. Yeah, okay, I got the pole, but we've come to play for the team's championship for first and foremost. But where we sit at the end of the championship with tournament drivers, we'll decide that at the end, I suppose. But the teams is certainly our focus on this. So, but at the end of the day, still happy with a 3-4. So we'll take it from there.
Yeah, it was a good team result. The first stint, you were, for at least the first half of it, you were definitely there or thereabouts with Foley and Lewis. Was it just the pace was a bit too much for the tyres? Did you have tyre trouble as well, like Foley did towards the end and a bit faster, or was it just that their pace was just too relentless?
Probably a combination of both, I think. The pace was pretty relentless, and my tyres probably gave up a bit quicker than I thought, but... that's a bit of a setup thing. So again, like Foley, something to work on. But good work for Lewis and good work for Brenton. Just also like to say for JP Simshed to acknowledge from what happened last night in the F2 and pass on our condolences to Anton Hubert. So I was watching it last night and that was pretty tragic. But just on behalf of us, just to put a shout out to his family and everybody as well.
Yeah, well said. On behalf of everyone here at AMS Oz as well, we'd also like to extend our condolences. It was a terrible thing to happen, and for us here in sim racing, we do this risk-free, and it's we know the people who are actually out there racing out on the tracks all around the world are doing something that is quite dangerous, and they're all keenly aware of that, and it's very unfortunate. But anyway, good job to Rob and JT Sim Sports for their result, and back to you, Nether.
Thank you, Bagzy. And yes, I'd also like to echo the same thing as yourself and Ozrob have just said with regards to the family of Antoine Hubert. It's that incident took place at Spa-Francorchamps, and that is the next circuit that we visit in 2 weeks' time for our first 90-minute race in the GT3, second GT3 series for 2019. And as I said, a circuit that most of the drivers will be very, very familiar with, and that a number of us were watching last night. So with along with already Cams and a number of the other motorsport bodies in this country and around the world, we're very, very shocked and very upset with what happened. It's a rarity these days in motorsport to see an incident like that, and let alone a death. So we're very, very sad, and we send our condolences to his family and others, and also the marshals that were involved in having to attend that scene. Before we go, one thing I do want to touch on is probably our drive of the day, and we'll try and see if we can pick out some drives of the day for each round this season. And I think that honour pretty much hands down would go to Will Devonish. And I just want to grab him very, very quickly for this, because you started out the back, Will, and by the end of the flag you were P4. But I want to get your thoughts and your details on what happened in the qualifying session there for you to end up starting at rear grid.
It's literally the session just clicked over and the game was like, nah, I'm booting you back to Windows. So fortunately I wasn't quick enough to get back in, so had to start from the rear.
Well, you pretty much guaranteed that your drive of the day, you were you side through the field. You were basically into the top 10 within about the first 3 laps, and you did really, really well to get through what was essentially a very, very angry pack of about 7 cars, pretty much unscathed. Talk us through some of that.
Yeah, first 10, I don't want to say were easy, but I think I was a bit better on cold tyres, and then I got up to 8th, and it took a few laps to get past everyone one by one. Rossi definitely put up a fight, wouldn't let me by easily, but the car itself it was a dream, especially that second stint. It wasn't putting a foot wrong, and I was really happy with how that was driving. And I was really happy to catch up to Rob and be able to cross the line 3-4 really close together like we did.
Good to hear, and if only the Gremlins didn't appear, it would have been great to see what you could have done up the front of the field with the top two, but looking forward to see what you can do in 2 weeks' time at Spa-Francorchamps. Let's pause now, I guess, and close the end of the week on what has been a very, very busy sim racing week. We've had the introduction of TCR Oz for AMS Oz on Monday, Tuesday ASC, the Automobilista Supercars, TCAC Retro Wednesday, Thursday we had Super 2 for AMS Oz Super 2, and then we ended up with the GT3 series tonight. So Bagzy, it's been an action-packed week, and probably one of the busiest sim racing weeks, not only for us as commentators, but as viewers as well.
Yeah, it certainly has. I'd just like to say for mine, driver of the day, while Devonish had a good job, Lewis Wedding, I think, just because leading from essentially start to finish and no mistakes, it was after starting in second, pretty much, in my opinion, that's going to get driver of the day, even though Devonish did quite a good job.
I do tend to agree. It's very difficult to split those two in terms of driver of the day honours, but it's each to their own, I guess, is the way we will call that one. But we will see you in 2 weeks' time for round number 2 out of Spa-Francorchamps. But for the moment, this was round number 1 for Sydney Motorsport Park, the first race of our 8-race GT3 second series for 2019. My name is Nether. Bagzy was alongside me for this one, and until next time, please drive safely. Bye for now.